Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you are watching PBS Books. Thank you for joining us. PBS Books, in collaboration with South Florida PBS, is pleased to host a conversation with award-winning author T.J. Klune, author of In the Lives of Puppets. Since 2015, PBS Books has worked to share with audiences across the country the voices of dynamic, diverse authors as they attended book festivals. PBS Books is a proud partner of the Library of Congress to promote their 2023 National Book Festival. Let's take a moment to hear from Dr. Carla Hayden.
I'm Carla Hayden, Librarian of Congress, and I want to give a thank you to PBS Books for supporting the National Book Festival. Hope you can join us in Washington and online for this year's festival on Saturday, August the 12th.
Thank you. Well, the 2023 Library of Congress National Book Festival occurred on Saturday, August 12th, like Dr. Hayden shared. The festival was free and opened to everyone, focusing on the theme, Everyone Has a Story. Since then, the Library of Congress has worked to prepare all of the festival conversations to be available for you, representing the voices of 80 outstanding authors. Just go to loc.gov/bookfest. Now through August 31st, PBS Books and PBS stations across the country will host a series of 10 virtual conversations with 11 authors. They are also available on demand on PBS Books and the National Book Festival website. Let's take a moment to hear from President and CEO, South Florida PBS, Dolores Fernandez Alonso.
Welcome. I'm Dolores Fernandez Alonso, President and CEO for South Florida PBS. And I am thrilled to be here to introduce this evening's event with author T.J. Klune in celebration of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. I am proud that South Florida PBS is committed to sharing the voices of contemporary authors through our program Between the Covers, hosted by Ann Bocock, who will be moderating today's conversation. There is no question that books have the ability to bring people from various places together, just like the Library of Congress National Book Festival, which has become one of the most prominent literary events in the United States. We hope that you'll enjoy and join us on a journey tonight and learn more about best-selling author T.J. Klune and his book, In the Lives of Puppets. We are also thrilled that PBS Books partners with libraries, as libraries are a crucial partner for South Florida PBS and other PBS stations across the country. We hope you'll enjoy tonight's conversation. South Florida PBS is proud to be part of this important event. Back to you, Heather.
Thanks, Dolores. Today's conversation features T.J. Klune to discuss his latest work and his involvement in the National Book Festival. So let's meet T.J. T.J. Klune is the best-selling author of The House in Cerulean Sea, Into the River I Drown, and Under the Whispering Door. He is also the author of multiple fantasy series, as well as the young adult series, The Extraordinaries. Klune has won a Lamba Literary Award and an Alex Award and has been nominated for a Locus Award. Being queer himself, Klune believes it's important now more than ever to have accurate, positive, queer representation in stories. His latest novel, In the Lives of Puppets, will be featured in the 2023 National Book Festival. It is my pleasure to welcome T.J.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're so happy to have you. And to guide the conversation today, we are thrilled to have Ann Bocock, who is the host of Between the Covers. Ann Bocock began her broadcasting career in radio news in Richmond, Virginia. She worked as an anchor, reporter, and talk show host, working in several East Coast markets. She was the host of the talk show Florida Forum of the NPR affiliate radio station WXEL for 8 years, with interviews ranging from national interest to local celebrities. She is now currently the host of Between the Covers, an interview show about books and authors produced by South Florida PBS and distributed nationally. It is my extraordinary honor to welcome Anne. Welcome, Anne.
Heather, thank you so much. I am just delighted that I can be part of this conversation. I mean, this is like a front row seat to a literary journey, all the things that you're doing. And I'm really happy to be able to talk to TJ. So thank you, Heather.
Well, enjoy the conversation. I can't wait to see you at the end.
TJ, hi. Nice to
thank
see
you so
you.
much. It's nice to see you too.
So glad to meet you. And before we talk about anything, can I tell you that because of you, this is the first time a vacuum cleaner ever made me cry.
You know what? That sentence has been uttered to me many, many times over the past few weeks since that book came out, and I
Isn't
am
it
all
crazy?
here
I mean,
for it. I am here for it.
I want to get inside your head because these worlds that you have created, these characters, they've stolen my heart.
They are certainly something, aren't they? Nurse Ratched and Rambo, these machines that populate this book in the lives of puppets, are some of the strangest and yet some of the best that I've created. And I'm so pleased that people are able to finally meet them. It feels like it's been a long, long time to get the book out.
All right, let's go back to the vacuum cleaner that stole my heart, and that's Rambo. And how do you come up with that?
I'll give you the honest answer, and it's probably slightly embarrassing for me in that the whole reason this book exists is because of capitalism. Because one day I decided I needed to buy a Roomba vacuum, and so I did what that thing that humans do, where we anthropomorphize, where we give human qualities to inhuman things. So I put little googly eyes on it. And when you first turn on these machines, they have to go and start mapping around the house or their location so they know where to go. And this weird little machine started doing just that. And then for some reason, it got itself stuck in a corner, and it made the saddest beeping sound that I have ever heard a machine make. And for some reason, that just blew up this entire story in my head. Almost immediately, I knew who Rambo was. I knew he was going to be a vacuum cleaner with a heart of gold and social anxiety. I knew there was going to be a human named Victor. I knew that there was going to be, if there was going to be a human and there was machines, then there needed to be a nursing machine to help to make sure he's healthy, the human. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what if she's a sociopath? And then it all just kind of came together from there. So the real reason this book exists is because one day I decided I needed a new vacuum cleaner.
I love it, but one with googly eyes, of course.
One with googly eyes, yes, because we do that. I love humans so much because when we see things that are inhuman, we always try to put some human-like qualities on them, and I find that fascinating.
Well, the book, In the Lives of Puppets, you are pretty much reimagining the Pinocchio story. And I don't mean the Disney version, because
correct,
there are some dark moments here. And then, as I say, it's dark. Somehow you have this recipe to cook the dark with light, and you've created magic. I mean, it's a wondrous story. What was the inspiration?
I'd always been wanting to play around with a retelling or a reimagining of a fairy tale or a fable. The reason being, and you mentioned Disney, is that when I went on tour for this book to talk about it, I always asked a question. I asked, how many of you have read Carlo Collodi's The Adventures of Pinocchio, the original story? You know, a handful of people would raise their hands. And then I would ask, how many of you have seen the 1940 Disney version? And surprise, surprise, most everybody raised their hands. While the Disney version does have some moments of darkness, if you remember, there was the scene in the film where the children are turning into donkeys, which is quite frightening. But at the same time, as with most Disney retellings or adaptations, it loses something in the luster of it. The Disney sheen is bright and shiny, but what's so interesting about all these old fairy tales and fables is the undercurrent of darkness, or not even an undercurrent, like the through line of darkness that's in each of them. In the original version of The Adventures of Pinocchio, when Collodi first wrote the original draft, he wrote Pinocchio getting killed at the end, getting hung from a tree from his hubris for wanting to become human. And it was not until his editor came in and said, you know, you're writing this story for children, right? And that's why he changed the ending to make it how we know today. But I just love this idea that these fairy tales and fables, these stories that have been with us for centuries, all bask in darkness. And I love that.
It doesn't get much darker than the one that you just spoke about.
Yeah.
TJ, do you write books that you would have liked to have read as a younger person? And I ask because you do have readers of all ages.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, I just turned 41 years old. What's so wonderful about books is how diverse that they have become, but it wasn't always that way. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that the science fiction and fantasy genre was a straight white male game, with notable exceptions, of course. But for a very long time, marginalized voices in science fiction and fantasy were underrepresented. And if they were represented, it was not to any kind of mainstream success. So when I was a kid, I never got to see myself in the books that I read. I never got to see a queer person. I never got to see a kid with ADHD. And if I did see any of those things, they were either harmful stereotypes or they were there. We were there to teach very valuable lessons to the straight characters. So when I'm writing, I am writing for anybody who wants to read my books, but I'm also writing specifically with my queer audience in mind, because for so long, we never got to have our stories told. We never got to be the heroes of our own story. So I want to make sure that if there's a kid out there anywhere in this country or around the world who feels like that they haven't been seen, I want to make sure I write them the book so they can have that moment.
I want to talk about that just a little bit more. You are consciously focused on giving your readers representation.
Correct.
And you are, in your books, you celebrate the otherness.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that we're missing in books, in all kinds of media? You're giving your readers validity, for lack of a better word, and that's a gift. And it is a personal thing, correct?
It absolutely is personal, because, when you're a kid and you are queer, it can create a sense of otherness to you. It can make you feel like you can't relate to your peers in any meaningful way. And granted, things have gotten, I hesitate to use this word given where we are now, but things have gotten better than where I was when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s. That being said, with the extraordinary movement as of late to restrict what can or cannot be read, it feels like we're in the same battle that we were in 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it just reminds me that no matter what, these arguments are circular, that in 40 or 50 years, we may be having the same conversations again about who can or cannot read books. I am uniquely aware of the position I'm in and the privilege that I have. And at the same time, I'm going to use that position and that privilege as much as I possibly can to ensure that queer voices and other marginalized voices are heard, no matter what.
On the same wavelength here, as an advocate for representation in literature, are there changes that you'd like to see in the industry as a whole? Something that could perhaps further promote inclusivity and diversity?
Absolutely. The young adult genre has been at the forefront of diversity and inclusion for many years. You can find authors of color, trans, queer, non-binary authors getting to be able to tell their stories in young adult. Unfortunately, adult fiction is still kind of dragging behind in that regard. It's only as of late that we're seeing more and more authors of color and queer authors in the science fiction and fantasy genre actually get a seat at the table. I really think in order to move forward and become more inclusive, we have to emulate young adult genre, because the young adult genre, they know how to speak to their readers. They know what stories their readers are looking for, and they're getting to be told from so many different points of view that it's wonderful. And I'm really, really hoping that science fiction and fantasy, the adult market follow suit with what young adult has been doing time and time again.
It's very interesting that the young adult market seems to be, I don't know, more current, I suppose.
Well, it's the fact that the kids these days, and it makes me sound so old when I say that, I feel that in my bones, but the kids these days are so much smarter, savvier, more worldly than we ever were at their age. If anything, they have the entire world's information in their pocket at all times. They can look up anything that they want to. And in my time in traveling around this country and in the UK and in Canada, I've gotten to speak with many, many young people. And I will tell you one thing, they are paying attention and they are very, very upset by what's going on, by the wrongness, by the people in power in charge trying to dictate what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot read. They are paying attention. And they will be listening and watching, and their voices will be heard. I used to worry about the future. I really did. But in the time that I've spent speaking with young people around the world, I've learned that I don't need to worry anymore. If anything, it's the people in power right now that need to worry, because the kids are coming and they're going to make their voices heard.
The kids are coming, and from what I'm hearing from you, we're in good hands.
Absolutely.
TJ, what does it mean for you to be part of this, the Library of Congress National Book Festival? And I'll give you a little aside. For me, being from a small town and as a child, libraries showed me a world that existed beyond what I knew and really carved my path. Tell me about any personal connections that you may have had.
So I grew up in a town in Oregon called Roseburg. Right outside of Roseburg is a little community called Melrose. It's a very small town. And you have to imagine that this is in the 80s and the 90s, a la the AIDS crisis, Reagan, Clinton, don't ask, don't tell. And so imagine you are a queer kid coming of age in a rural setting like that, and you also have undiagnosed ADHD. And live in a household where things like the love of reading and writing are something to be mocked and made fun of. I learned very early on, if there was something joyous that brought me happiness, that it was something that could be taken away. So what did I do? I tried to escape from that house as much as I possibly could. And one of those places was the Douglas County Public Library. And the Douglas County Public Library saved my life as a kid. It doesn't get, I don't need to wax on about that even more, because it literally saved my life when I was a kid. I would bike into town every day during the summer, and I would spend when the library opened till when the library closed. That's where I would spend my days. I would read fiction, nonfiction. I would read anything I could get my hands on. And it didn't matter if it was far above my reading level. I still wanted to read, and that's how I learned. And the librarians there, they were enablers of the best kind. They fed my addiction to books. They asked me what I wanted to read, what I was looking for. And in fact, the librarian, one of the librarians, the one that I talked to most when I was a kid, was one of the first people I came out to. And she, at that point, started giving me books with queer people in them. And I've never forgotten that. I never have forgotten that, because I know how it feels to be able to be in that position and need somebody or something to hold on to. Libraries are backbones of communities. Libraries are some of the most important things we have. And the attack on libraries in the year 2023 is not only mind-boggling, it's absolutely destructive.
This library was a lifeline for you.
Oh gosh, yes. I honestly, I would not be here without this library, because it was the place where I could go and not feel judged by anyone or anything. And I could be ignored and wrapped in the world of a book. All I would do is find some corner in this library, stack of books, and I would stay there all day and read.
You also shared something with me a little earlier, but before we went on air, and that was you had two English teachers. I believe you were middle school, that really fostered you and said you could write.
Yeah, that was Mrs. Benson and Mrs. Pfeiffer. Look, when I was in seventh grade, by the time I got to seventh grade at Fremont Junior High in Roseburg, my self-esteem was non-existent. I I had been, there's more than just physical abuse. Psychological and mental abuse is extraordinary on a child. It is damaging like you wouldn't believe. And all I heard as a kid was, I'm not good enough. You're not good enough to do this. You're not good enough to do that. Why do you like reading? Why do you like writing? That's stupid. Don't do that. And it was not until I got into 7th grade that I met 2 women who changed my life, Mrs. Benson, Mrs. Pfeiffer. And they told me that writing was important, that writing was good. And in one class we had with them near the beginning of the year, they gave us this assignment where we had to turn this memory we had into fiction. And I don't remember what I wrote about, but what I do remember is just how nervous I was on that day, going into class, getting ready to turn in my assignment, only to find out then that Mrs. Benson, Mrs. Pfeiffer were evil because they did not take the stories home to grade them like I thought. Instead, they gave us busy work and started grading them right in front of us. So me, a socially anxious, awkward tween, watched his folder getting higher and higher in the stack, and I'm sinking lower and lower in my seat, just covered in flop sweat. And then Mrs. Bentz opened my story and started reading, and she started chuckling, and she started laughing louder and louder. And Mrs. Pfeiffer heard her and came over to see what was going on, and they started from the beginning, and Miss Pfeiffer read over her shoulder. And by the time they finished, they were laughing so hard they were crying. And that was the very first time that I understood the power of the written word, that it could bring people joy, happiness, excitement, love, laughter. And at the very end of my school year with them, in my very last class with them, they told me one day they would see my name on a book in a bookstore. And guess what? I'm proof positive of the power that teachers have over their students. In addition to the Douglas County Public Library, Mrs. Benson and Mrs. Pfeiffer were defining moments of my childhood. I would not be here without them because they showed me what faith in a child can look like.
All right, TJ, you just gave me chills, and I guess anybody else that just heard that too. What a testament to mentors, to libraries, to teachers. I want to look at the fantasy genre for a moment because there's an ability through this to allow us to see an alternate reality. And that when we stretch our imagination to see beyond the right now, can't we end up fostering change? Can't we does disillusionment or feeling the societal wrongs, does that fuel your storylines in this same manner?
It does, because even though I'm writing about the fantastical, I'm still thinking in very real world terms. If we're looking at books like The House on the Cerulean Sea, it deals with bigotry, but instead of dealing with bigotry of homophobia, racism, misogyny, it deals with bigotry against magical beings. And Under the Whispering Door, we learn about internalized hatred and what that does to a person. And in The Lives of Puppets, we're looking at what does forgiveness look like? Who has the right to forgive? What does that even mean? What does forgiveness even look like to a person who may or may not have been affected? I think that in science fiction and fantasy, as in with all books, it's not necessarily about the bigger part of the story. It's about the humanness, and that we can relate to these people, these characters. And that's how it felt for me. That's how reading has always felt for me. Even books where I don't understand the characters' actions or motivations, I can still relate to them because they're fundamentally human. And I find it fascinating that for all our big ideas and our how often we look to the stars, we're still just fundamentally flawed. We are imperfect creations, and there's nothing like us in all the universe. And I don't understand why so many of us decide that destruction is the best way to go when we could be building a world that is better for everyone. Everyone. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of difficult work, but you know what? We can do that. We can absolutely do that.
Let's go back to the human element for a moment. Victor Lawson in The Lives of Puppets is a human, perhaps the only remaining human in the universe. The other characters are not human, but they're main characters. They're not just side characters. His family, his true family, his adoptive father is a machine. Then you have Nurse Ratched, who as much as I loved Rambo, I adore her because she's just sociopathic and she does says the most outrageous things. You show us what a family is
Mhm.
and talk about that and what a home is.
So, there has been a tropification, if that's a word, of the idea of found family. And I get it. I get
Mhm.
why a lot of people love that idea and love that term. But something that I'm always trying to caution people of, or at least make them aware of, is found family is not a trope. It comes from a very real place. Many, many queer people don't get to have the love and respect and hope and joy and all of that that comes along with growing up from their families. They don't get to have that. I didn't get to have that. So what do? We go out into the world and find people to become part of our family. My family is made up of my sister, my brother, and everybody else in my family is not related to me by blood. That is the choice I made. I went out into the world and I found people who would love me for me and who I could love for them. So when we get to the idea of found family in fiction, it's become almost like a marketing point now. It's become like a selling point. And I get that. I get why people love to read about that kind of stuff. But I just hope that people remember that found family, this idea of coming together, comes from a real place for so many queer people. And this family in particular, I love them because of how different they are. You would think, looking at all of them separately, if they were a machine, that their parts wouldn't necessarily work together, but they do. They absolutely do, because Rambo and Nurse Ratched, they are Victor's friends. They are his family, even if in essence they are essentially supposed to mimic the Jiminy Cricket or Talking Cricket role by being Victor's conscience. They still have their own arcs and motivations and desires. And I love that they are, as you said, essentially main characters, because they are on page as much as the main character Victor is.
Hello, I'm Ann Bocock from South Florida PBS. And for those of you just joining, we're talking to author TJ Klune about his new book, In the Lives of Puppets. Now let's get back to our conversation. This is the Library of Congress event, and we are certainly, as we talked a little bit before, in a climate that has many challenges to books in school libraries. Some books are being outright banned. Let's get into your concerns and what you think about this just a little bit more.
So I have been in a position where my books are not as prevalently challenged or banned in the United States. And I recently did an interview with The Hill, and I was asked, why do you think your books aren't getting mentioned as much as some other queer novels? And I have a very good answer for that. I am a cis, white, gay man. Most of the books, especially books listed by American Library Association as being banned or challenged in the United States, are either A, written by an author of color, or B, written by a trans person, or C, written by a trans author of color. That is what is being targeted. And let's look at that a little bit closely then. So if they are going after books about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and they're going against, or they're trying to take down books that are by Black people, for Black people, about being Black, is that about protecting the children? No. That's about homophobia and racism and transphobia, pure and simple. That's what it is. We look back to the 1970s in Dade County, Florida, and we see the woman Anita Bryant, who came in and said, parents and teachers and books are indoctrinating children into the lifestyles of homosexuals. We need to get rid of them. What did she do? She started the Save Our Children campaign, in essence, to go in and root out queer teachers in schools. Does that sound familiar? Yes, because the same exact thing, including the language of saving children, is going on in the state of Florida and across the country right now. It boils down to this. They do not care about the children. All they care about is control of what these people in their community can read. They care about removing any mention of queerness, of racial inequality, from the hands of students. And my biggest issue, aside from the fact that they're doing that, is not a single one of them has ever gone to ask the children, what do they want? Nobody, none of these people who are in charge of removing or banning books or telling libraries to take down pride displays, and if you don't, we're going to defund your library, not a single one of those people has ever gone to the young people and said, what do you think? And guess what? Those young people know. They notice that. They know that. And they are angry. They are furious that there are people coming in, some people without children, some people who don't have a background or education in education, and telling them, you cannot read this. What is the one thing that you should not tell a child to do? Not to do something, because guess what? They're going to do it.
I'm going to go back to something that you said much earlier in this conversation, is that you are hopeful because of the children, because of the next generation. So I'm going to stick to that.
Absolutely. We should be, while the future can be scary, I know that we are going to be in good hands, because the young people and the kids that are coming up after us are going to make up and fix everything that we got wrong.
I consider a sense of place as important as a character study when I'm reading fiction. And not only have you created a sense of place, you've created an entire world. How do you even think on that scale? I mean, to me, it's more than impressive, because I'm reading about this world, and not only read it, I'm feeling it.
I am a very sensory driven writer. If I have my characters walking through a forest at dusk and the sun is setting, I want readers to feel the crunch of the leaves, hear the wind through the trees, see the violet and the peaches of the bruised sunset. I want them to see all of that, because it's important to me that if I'm creating this world that is maybe not so different from our own, maybe just a half step to the right, I want them to still be able to feel and see and hear and taste everything that my characters are, because I kind of tend to think of writing like a painting. Except without color, I'm using words, and I'm trying to make you visualize every single aspect of what I'm telling you. I love words. I love words so much, because of the way that they can make people feel. You can bring people to tears by just moving words in a very specific order. And I love how words can shape and change and do everything. So with this world, I wanted the people to feel like they could be there, like they could be walking with Victor and Hap and Nurse Ratched and Rambo and going on their adventure. Because I know when I was a kid reading books like Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, I felt like I was there with Howl and Sophie and Calcifer. I felt like I was in this house, this beautiful house, and I was seeing magic from this wizard. I know how it feels to be transported, and I know that there's nothing more wonderful than being transported by a good book.
Words have power, books have power. Was there a particular moment when you realized that your words held this power?
I have been very fortunate in that I have been published since 2011, and I have released over 30 novels, and I have been able to speak with the most people that I ever thought possible. I never thought that I would be able to do what I do. I've dreamed about this since I was a kid. So over the course of my career, I've heard from so many different people, from their own stories of triumph, of grief, of hope, of loss. I've heard them, but there's one that sticks out in my mind above all others. And that was a note I received in a direct message on social media. I typically don't check social media direct messages, just because people can be kind of strange sometimes. But one day I was on, when I used to use Facebook, I was on there, and this was fall 2020, so very, very deep into the pandemic. And I saw a notification popped up for a Facebook direct message, and I don't know why, but I clicked on it and I opened it, and there was a small amount of text in brackets at the very top, and it was from a queer father. And this queer father told me that he and his son had just read The House on the Cerulean Sea with their other father, and that his son, this 8-9-year-old kid, wanted to talk to me about it. What followed after that was this huge block of text, this stream of consciousness diatribe from this kid who was basically giving me a book report on my own book. And I was, immediately charmed and thought that was delightful. And then towards the end of the message, it changed. The tenor of the note changed. It said, the boy told his father, who then told me through the computer, that the pandemic had made him feel very lonely and sad because he had not been able to see his friends, and that it felt very scary in the world. But by reading The House in the Cerulean Sea and spending time with Chauncey and Tal and Sal and Fee and Talia and Lucy and Theodore, he felt like he was with his friends again, and that it didn't make him feel so alone. I don't know if I've received compliments, many compliments over the course of my career. I'm very lucky to have that, but I don't know that I've been as profoundly touched by a message from a person who's read my books than I was at that. I gave this child a moment where he didn't feel alone. And that's if I never sell another book for the rest of my life after this, I will have accomplished what I set out to do.
TJ, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. No matter New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, does it get any better than that, child?
No, it doesn't. Absolutely. Bestsellers, awards, that's all great. It's wonderful, but it's superfluous. It doesn't really matter to the average reader. No, it absolutely doesn't. I love it. It's wonderful. But the intimate, small moments are the moments that make all of this worth it. Hands down, day after day, I will take those moments over any accolade in the world.
When you find this level of success, and I mean the award-winning, the best-selling, the series or characters, then do you strive to deliver more of what the readers want, or do you try to change it up, or is there some delicate balance here?
There is. When The House in the Cerulean Sea was my first novel for a lot of people, that they read for the first time, read one of my books. And I know how there is a tendency to want to have the same type of story with the next book that author releases, but I can't do that. I'm not like that. I have written in many different genres, and though I've firmly found my home in science fiction and fantasy, just because I write a book like In the Lives of Puppets or Under the Whispering Door or House in the Cerulean Sea does not mean that my next books are going to be those exact stories. I love telling different types of stories about different types of people. Sometimes they may be happy and joyful like Cerulean Sea. Other times they might be more dangerous like In the Lives of Puppets. But the through line through every single one of my books is that they will always be about queer people and what that looks like when queer people succeed, even if the road is rocky ahead.
All of the characters in the Lives of Puppets, the human character and the machines, they have growth. They feel, there are dangers and obstacles and things they have to figure out. But above all, they're also darn lovable. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, so I think these characteristics in a human, but you've made it so seamless that the non-humans feel the same.
And that's so important. That's absolutely so important, because if you're trying to tell a story about the danger, I mean, let's be frank, the science fiction and fantasy genre have been warning people about the advances of artificial intelligence for a very long time, but nobody seems to be listening. And now we have this advancement of all these different AIs that are going around. And
yeah, we're listening.
Right. No, but it's one of those things. It's like with climate change. Okay, maybe you're listening, Buzz. Is it already too late? I mean, none of you seen Terminator? We know what Skynet does to people, so come on. But these characters, they were always going to be larger than life, because when your book is a big, huge adventure story, but it basically follows 4 or 5 characters and there's a big story happening around them, but not necessarily about them, you have to make them real. You have to make them, even though you know that in technology we don't have something like a Rambo yet. We don't have something like a Nurse Ratched yet, but there is something so believable about them that, you know what, maybe in 5-10 years we could have something like that. And is that a good thing or is it not so good? I don't know. All I know is that, like with any advancement, with anything, we need to take great care with our technology and what we do with it. Because I remember the days when I was young and we had AOL Instant Messenger, and there was a very early version of a AI on there called Smarter Child that you would type to and it would respond to you. But now you have AI, you have people who call themselves authors who are writing books, or not writing even, who are getting stories from artificial intelligence from these chat GPTs and publishing them and calling themselves an author. That is not art. That is not how art works. No matter how perfect machines can get, they will never have the soul of a human being. Our art needs our passion, our rage, our fire, our joy, and our drive, and machines don't have that.
I'm, now we do have something to worry about with that. I'm always fascinated by the journey. Was the road to writing for you a winding path?
It depends upon what I'm actually writing. If within the Lives of Puppets and how I've done as of late is, as of late, I should say, with like the last 5 years, is I outline everything I write to a ridiculous amount. In the Lives of Puppets, the outline for that book was 60,000 words itself. And that was all written before I ever started a word on the book. I spent 6 months researching everything I needed to for this book before I started. And my outline isn't a set in stone. It is a living document for me that I can update as I go along. But my outlines are so extensive because I put things into them that'll never go into the book just for me. I put things in my outlines, like, speaking of Victor, the main character, what does he have nightmares about? What is his favorite food? What is his favorite smell? I put all of that kind of stuff in my notes so I know these characters as best I possibly can. And then so when I finally sit down to write their story, I know them as well as I know myself.
60,000 words in the outline. I'm still trying to process that.
Yeah, it was a lot. It got a little egregious by the end, but I was having too much fun just adding all these little what ifs in.
I want there to always be a happy ending for your characters, even in the dark stories. So, I mean, I don't know if we can pinky swear to that, but I would like that.
If there are queer people in my books, they may have a challenging time from the beginning to the middle to the end. But my queer people, my queer characters will always get the ending they deserve.
I love that. And I will tell you one thing. When I get a Roomba, I promise you, I am going to put googly eyes on it too.
And you have to give it a name after you do that, because mine is named Hank for no reason whatsoever. It just is. So when you do it, you have to give it a name.
TJ, I love that. TJ Klum's latest book is The Lives of Puppets. I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you for spending this time with me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for this. And thank you to the Library of Congress and PBS Books for being able to have this conversation about the importance of libraries in communities and the books that we can get from them.
Heather, I am turning it back to you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to chat with TJ. I'm very honored by that, and I'm very honored to be part of this important event.
Well, Anne, this has been amazing. You've guided such an incredible conversation, and it's been so much fun to listen and participate. Your questions were thoughtful, and TJ, your passion, your creativity, your love and use of words, your dedication to also ensure that marginalized voices are heard, it's all inspiring. So thank you both for this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you, Anne, for such a lovely questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all our library partners out there, as well as numerous PBS stations throughout the country. But most importantly, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us. A reminder to you all, the Library of Congress has worked very hard to prepare incredible content on demand for all of you. It is the content that was created at the Library of Congress National Book Festival on August 12th, and it's now available. If you go to loc.gov/bookfest, you will be able to browse through the voices of nearly 80 outstanding authors and curate your own National Book Festival experience. Well, until next time, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and happy reading.